Welcome to episode 1 of the Geek podcast. My name is Joel, and I will be your host for this podcast. It's episode 1. I'm excited to get started, so let's begin. So, for this first episode, I want to talk a little bit about me and then talk a little bit about why I decided to start an EV podcast. So, a little bit about me. Been working in the public education sector for about 21 years now. Married, 2 kids, and I reside here in Central Arkansas, which is probably not the EV capital of the world. I didn't grow up around cars. I didn't grow up loving cars. In fact, I grew up knowing very little about cars. So being a car enthusiast my entire life, yeah, that's not me. I can basically change washer fluid, change wipers, and change oil in cars. And that's the extent of my car knowledge. So this podcast is not coming to you from someone with extensive, car and technical car background. It's just coming from someone who, over the last 5 years, just kind of fell in love with electric vehicles. So my electric vehicle journey started in 2021. At that time, I owned a Dodge 1500 Ram. Loved owning a truck. Loved the truck life. However, buying gas and loving the truck life can get expensive. For my job and for dropping kids off at school, I was spending probably anywhere from $300 to $350 a month on gas, and today that would be even more. So at that time, we thought about looking into purchasing an EV. It just happened also at that time, we had installed solar at that house and actually got a level 2 Tesla charger installed at our house. So we had it here, and we thought at that time, hey, this is a great time for us to purchase our first electric vehicle. But it was a tough decision. We decided that we were going to trade my truck in, my Dodge Ram 1500, which I love, for a Tesla Model 3. So we're going from a really big truck to a kind of small car. We thought it was going to take some adjustment, but it didn't take that much adjustment that I thought it would. So in September of 2021, we drove to St. Louis and picked up our 2021 Tesla Model 3 standard range. Why do we drive to St. Louis? Because there are laws in Arkansas that you can't sell Teslas here, and we will save that for another episode. So took the family up, saw a Cardinals game, drove back, and loved it. I can't believe I didn't own one before then. All those misconceptions that I heard were kind of thrown out the window. Pulled my car in at night, plugged it in, woke up the next morning with a full charge, drove, came home, plugged it in. Basically, just like charging your cell phone. So 2021 was a great year. Had the car, no problems. 2022 rolls around, it's spring break, and I decided to take my boys on a road trip to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So that's a long trip from Central Arkansas to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in a Model 3. And actually, it was a great trip, and we'll save that for another episode as well. But after that trip, I realized something, that the Model 3 for long trips, which we like to take because we have family on the East Coast, is just too small. So at that time, my wife made the decision to upgrade to a Model Y. At that time, I found a local EV dealership here in Central Arkansas and was able to purchase at that time, a 2020 Model Y long range. And that is what I currently own now. Love the car, and I drive the wheels off it. Kind of around this same time, my wife was getting the EV itch as well. She owned a Kia Telluride, and she loved it. She's owned Kias before that, and she's had a good experience with them. So we thought, hey, let's just go down to the local dealership and let's test drive one of those Kia EV6s. Test drove it, and she fell in love with it. So starting around mid 2022, we officially became a 2 EV vehicle family. There are no gas powered cars in our garage anymore. Strictly all EVs, with her EV6 and my Model Y. And that's where the fun adventure kind of began. So for the past 2 years, that has been us. We have been a 2 EV car family. And over those 2 years, owning an EV, I didn't know a lot about it. Like I said, I didn't grow up a car enthusiast, didn't grow up a car lover. Just knew that I wanted to purchase an EV. So owning an EV means you have a lot of questions about EV. So first thing that I did is I joined the local Tesla owners group here in Arkansas. And Met with them, learned a lot more about EVs, and became just more interested in them. After a while, I actually became the vice president of the local group here and still serve in that capacity. Also started meeting different people in the industry, started meeting people who sell EVs, started meeting people in the renewable energy, started meeting people who, install and sell superchargers. So I just became more and more engulfed in the community and took more and more of an interest into it. And at that time, I said, you know what? Let's start watching podcasts and let's start watching YouTube videos about it and learn even more about it. So around that same time, 2 years ago, I really got into watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts about electric vehicles. And there's some great ones out there, and we'll talk about some great ones later on that I suggest that you listen to if you're not into them. But I also noticed that there's a lot of podcasts out there that aren't for daily EV owners. There's a lot of great podcasts out there that tell you EV news. I love listening to those to find out what's going on in the EV industry with manufacturers, with cars around the world. Those are great podcasts to listen to. There's also podcasts out there that get really deep into the technical side of EVs, the torque, the horsepower, the 0 to 60, how they're made, and things like that. And that just really didn't interest me. I don't really take interest in how EVs are made and whether or not they have front mode or dual mode or things like that. Doesn't interest me. If it does interest you, we'll do podcasts about that, and it's something that I want to learn more about. What does interest me is just owning an EV and living and using an EV on a daily basis. And I didn't see a lot of kind of like those podcasts or videos out there of what it was like driving on a daily basis, what it's like, taking your family on a cross-country trip, what it's like owning one EV compared to another. What is the difference between owning a Chevy Bolt and a Tesla? And there's some people out there who own Chevy Bolts and they love them and hate Teslas. And there's people out there that own Teslas and love Chevy Bolts. So we want to make sure we're including all those people in this podcast. So what do you expect to see in this video or listen to in this video? What I want to do with this podcast is to just talk to people who own EVs. That's the majority of this video. We're going to talk to people who own EVs. We're going to talk to people who have owned multiple EVs or different EVs and just what it's like, pros and cons. Owning an EV is great. There's also some things about owning an EV that are not great. And we're going to talk about those things. This is not all going to be, fairy tales and roses, everything great EVs, and we're just going to talk fantastic things about them. We're going to praise Elon and praise Tesla for everything that they did. No, we want to know the good and the bad of EV ownership. Like I said, we want to focus on the daily life of EV ownership. I also want to focus on the industry, what it's like selling EVs, what it's like buying EVs, what it's like, charging EVs, what it's like road tripping in EVs, what it's like, everything that you can think of about owning and operating and traveling an electric vehicle, we are going to talk about here. If it's something you're interested in, let us know. We would love to hear from you, and I would like to hear from you about things that you're interested in the EV world. You can reach me at evgeek1@gmail.com. That's evgeek1, the number 1, at gmail.com, and just share some things that you'd like to hear about the EV industry. And we'll find people, or I'll talk about them, and heck, if you're interested that much in them, we'll have you on the podcast and talk to you about it. With this podcast, I'm going to try to do about 2 to 3 episodes a month. It all depends really on how busy my schedule is. I may pop on real quick and talk to you about some news that's going on. We're not going to focus too much on news. There's plenty of podcasts out there about it. But if something new and hot off the press that we need to talk about, and I'll give you my 2 cents on, I'll hop on and do a little quick podcast with that. But you can expect about 2 or 3 podcasts a month from me around EV life and the EV culture. I want to thank everyone for joining us on our first episode. Episode 2, which will be out in a few weeks, is going to be about me and my Model Y ownership and what it's been like the past, 3 or 4 years owning a Tesla, owning a Model 3 and a Model Y, and I talked a little bit about that life. So until next time, this is the EV Geek, and we will chat later.